Hey, what's up internet? Victor with PhoneArena here, and don't you just love it when an unknown company arrives to the Western market with a really great device? In this case, we're talking about Meizu, a Chinese company that is unknown to most Westerners. But it's a pretty well-known name in China, and it has released the Meizu M2 Note, this 5.5-inch affordable phablet that is just great at first sight. It comes for a price of just around $160 and that's if you buy from an unofficial third-party reseller. Note that this phone is not available via official channels yet. It's sold in some countries in Europe, but not in the United States, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And what are we talking about here? A 5.5-inch handset with a decent octa-core chip, have a 13 megapixel camera on the back, a 5 megapixel snapper on the front, and you have a nice large display, fairly nice design, and a very affordable price tag, and also a special Fly Me custom skin on top of Android 5.1 Lollipop. Is it any good, and is it as good as the specs sound? Let's find out. The Meizu M2 Note features a plastic body, but it has a nice non-cheap feel to it and is solidly put together. It comes in a choice of 4 colors, 3 glossy shells in pink, blue and white, and a matte grey body. It features a slim side bezel, so overall the phone ends up being narrower than other 5.5-inch phones. The M2 Note is also surprisingly lightweight for its size, weighing just 5.26 ounces. The new physical M back button replaces the round capacitive key that Meizu used in previous phones. And the new button is neat, it doubles as a back button and lock key, but while it has a clicky response to it, it does feel slightly wobbly. There's no fingerprint scanner here, yet still this is no ordinary button. Apart from clicking it to go home, you can slightly tap it to go back a step and long click it to lock the phone. The dedicated lock screen and volume rocker are positioned on the left hand side, somewhat inconveniently for a right-handed person, but you do get used to it. The 5.5-inch IPS LCD display comes with a 1080 by 1920 pixel resolution. It's an IGZO panel made by Sharp, and at regular viewing distances you won't notice any pixelization. It also has pleasing colors. It's not perfectly calibrated, but there is none of that typical bluish cast that we see often on affordable phones. Whites are just a bit colder than standard, but you can make them warmer in settings. Gamma is a bit higher than standard, resulting in a bit darker and more contrasty colors, and colors overall are just slightly oversaturated. Those, however, are relatively minor issues. The display overall looks nice, with the quality of the picture on par with many flagships. The screen also gets surprisingly bright. We measured peak brightness of 627 nits, even higher than Meizu's official claims of 450 nits. This is one of the brightest screens we've ever tested, and this makes it easier to read the phone outdoors, even on a bright sunny day. What's even more impressive is that at night it goes all the way down to 1 nit of brightness, making reading an experience that is less harsh on the eyes, and that's a great feature for all the night birdies out there. Viewing angles are also great, with almost no color tinting when you view the display at an angle. The only niggle that we have is that the light sensor does not work as well as we'd like. Sometimes it goes too dim to be comfortable to use, and sometimes too bright for the conditions, which is definitely annoying, as you oftentimes have to manually adjust the brightness. The Meizu M2 Note runs on the latest Android 5.1 Lollipop, and that's a great thing, but if you're looking for that typical stock Android visual style, you won't find it here. We're not particularly mad about this though. The Fly Me 4.5 custom skin by Meizu is one of the best skins that we've dealt with. A fast and smooth running affair with fluid animations, large easy to press icons, and a ton of useful additions. We've had some difficulties with Chinese Android skins in the past, and while we do have some slight mishaps here as well, the overall functionality and polish of the skin left us impressed. The M2 Note runs on the MediaTek MT6753, a 64-bit chip with 8 Cortex-A53 cores running at up to 1.3 GHz. There's 2 GB of RAM and the Mali T720 GPU. Those specifications, however, would be empty words if we didn't mention real-world performance, and in the case of the M2 Note, it's just very smooth and lag-free. There's no micro lag in first-party apps, and the multitasking menu comes up practically instantly. There is one key tune-up option that you need to be aware of before we go into further performance details. In Settings, Battery, and under the Power Mode tab, you can select between 3 modes for the phone: battery saver, balanced, and performance mode. We ran the phone in the default balanced mode, which is sufficient for daily use, and that's what we recommend using for most users. Performance would squeeze the most out of the silicon while putting an extra strain on the battery, while the battery saver mode will cap performance to maximize battery life. You have 16 GB of onboard storage here, but luckily the handset also supports expandable memory via microSD cards of up to 128 GB. It's worth noting that Meizu uses high-speed eMMC5 flash chips from Samsung, and we were impressed with how this resulted in quick installs of apps and overall faster performance. The M2 Note comes with a custom browser that features a very nice and speedy interface that is very well optimized for touch. Tab switching, for instance, is probably one of the fastest of any browser. We have not run any comparative loading time tests, but loading speeds were definitely not slow. Scrolling around and zooming in and out also happens without a stutter, and we also love the fact that you have a night mode for convenient reading. In terms of connectivity, the M2 Note has 4G LTE support with the common in Europe bands 1, 3 and 7. Fortunately, those bands are not widely supported on the major US carriers, meaning that you're not likely to get 4G LTE connectivity if you use this phone stateside. The Meizu M2 Note uses a clever SIM tray with support for dual SIM cards of the Nano SIM standard. You can use 4G LTE on both of those SIM cards. And interestingly, you can also use the second SIM slot for a microSD card that you put horizontally, so you have the choice of using the phone either as a single SIM phone with a microSD card or as a dual SIM phone with no microSD card support. In terms of connectivity, you have the standard dual channel Wi-Fi, GPS and Bluetooth 4.0, but there is no NFC support. The M2 Note comes with a 13 megapixel main camera with dual-tone LED flash, and there is a 5 megapixel selfie cam. Meizu's camera app is fast and features quite a few shooting modes, including slow motion and panorama. Images from the 13 megapixel main camera also turn out very nice. Shooting is fast and focusing happens impressively quickly, while many other affordable devices struggle with speed. And the actual images look sharp, very detailed and with nice color reproduction. They're not perfect and are inferior to pictures from high-end devices, with burnt highlights being a particularly noticeable issue, but overall are definitely great for such class of a device. In lower light, images could turn out a bit blurry, but still noise is kept at a reasonable level and overall quality is way above the average. The flash also does a good job illuminating objects, and with both a cold and warm lights, lighting turned out to be much more balanced. Selfies also turn out great. The 5 megapixel front shooter captures a lot of details and manages to get colors just right. Turning over to video, the M2 Note records video in up to 1080p at 30 frames per second. Videos look good, sharp, with good looking colors and very little rolling shutter effect. Unfortunately, there is no continuous autofocusing and you have to manually tap on objects on the screen to switch the focus, which does happen quickly. Also, the lack of stabilization results in videos that register every little tremor of the hand, and this constant shakiness is very annoying in the actual footage. The Meizu M2 Note comes with a bundle of first-party media apps that are minimalist and simplistic in nature. They get the job done. The video player comes with the option to swipe up and down on the left and right, left to adjust the volume, right to adjust the brightness, and you can also neatly swipe horizontally to fast forward or go back in a video. Simple and not exactly original, but very useful and practical for a video player. The same simplistic approach goes for the music app and the gallery. There is no support for FM radio on this phone. Speaking of music, the M2 Note's bottom-firing speaker is disappointingly quiet. And that's annoying. Oftentimes we'd want to show friends a video or let them hear a cool new song, and the speaker is just too quiet in order to hear well. Call quality on the Meizu M2 Note is generally good and we have no major gripes with it. Still, we should mention that voices in the earpiece sound a bit on the quiet side and with a slight distortion, while on the other end of the line, volume is fine and quality is a bit better. The M2 Note rocks a 3100 mAh battery. We have 2 points of reference for battery life. Our battery life test that measures performance with the screen always on, and our impressions from real life use. First, our battery test results, and they're nothing short of stellar. With some 9.5 hours battery life, this is one of the longest lasting phones we've ever tested. And then we have real life impressions. The phone easily lasts a full day, but not much more with average use. The reason for this might be in the fact that using the phone outdoors on a bright day pushes the brightness and subsequently battery drain high, and 4G LTE connectivity is an additional drain on the battery. Overall, real-world battery life is definitely good, but maybe not as stellar as our studio battery test would suggest this time around. The phone does not support Quick Charge 2, but it has a powerful 10-watt charger that takes just a bit more than 2 hours to fully recharge the battery, and that's sufficiently fast in our books. In conclusion, there is a lot to like about the Meizu M2 Note, but there is one important disclaimer, and we have to say it once again. The Meizu M2 Note is not officially sold via any official channels in the West, especially in the United States. You can get it in some European countries, but not stateside, and this means that you have to deal with third-party resellers, and the process of getting the phone is pretty straightforward. The price is set at $160, that's the full retail price in US dollars. But if you have some defects or some malfunction, you have to return it, and it's a lengthy process that you might not want to deal with. You don't have service centers, customer representatives, and that's a bit of a hustle. But if you're willing to experiment, there is a lot to like about the Meizu M2 Note. First, the display. It's got a pretty good display, a 5.5-inch display with great colors, nice brightness, easy to read, pleasing colors, nearly flagship grade display in a very affordable device. And then you have the Fly Me custom skin, a very minimalist skin that actually runs well, smoothly, with nice gestures, nice animations. Then you have a 30 megapixel camera, which also does a decent job. It's not exactly on par with the best out there, of course, but it's an affordable handset, so we can forgive it. The selfie cam is nice, battery life is good, even above average, and overall this is a very decent phone in all aspects that won't disappoint. Some things to keep in mind, that some apps that may not work properly. We have tested some non-essential apps that just failed to load. Google Play game services, for example, is one of those. But overall, most major apps, Facebook, WhatsApp, and all of that works fine in our experience. It's just that some non-essential apps may not work. If you're willing to experiment, give it a shot. We're sure that this phone will not disappoint you, as it offers a lot of value for the money. For a more detailed review, make sure to go to PhoneArena.com. As always, thanks for watching.